The air in the cavernous chamber is damp and cool as the party navigates through the echoing tunnels. The distant sound of dripping water provides a steady, eerie backdrop as they round a bend. The passageway opens into a cavern with a natural pool at the center, and the water is unnaturally still, reflecting the dim light of the party's torches and creating a mirrored surface that seems to absorb rather than reflect. Suddenly, without warning, the stillness is shattered as the water rises, forming a swirling vortex. The party find themselves face to face with a water weird, an elemental creature made of animated water. Its translucent form undulates with an outer-worldly grace as it hovers above the pool, tendrils of water extending towards you with an almost serpentine grace. The cavern's atmosphere becomes charged with the sound of rushing water and subtle, haunting melodies that seem to emanate from the creature itself. The water weird's liquid tendrils lash out, seeking to ensnare your party, and its form shimmers with a magical aquatic glow. Yes, in today's video we're going over the more intelligent elemental, the water weird. Hello and welcome to Dungeon Deep Dive, where we talk about all things D&D monsters, from monsters and their lore to their publication history, where they originated and how you can use them in your D&D games. In today's video we're going over the variant of the elemental that is more than just a brute, the water weird. Water weirds have been in D&D for a very long time and have been seen in a lot of modules and adventures throughout the years. The first official publication of the water weird was back in AD&D's first edition monster manual, where they were a very rare encounter and a chaotic evil creature that originated from the elemental plane of water. It would attack and feed on any creature's essence in a strange unknown manner, and they were pretty tough to fight, with a lot of attacks doing half to no damage to them. But if someone encountered a water weird and had a purify water spell by chance, they could instantly destroy the creature without having to fight them. It also gets a tiny little mention in the player's handbook and the dungeon master's guide. The weird is then mentioned in the 1981 Fiend Folio, but it's not as a monster stat block. Instead, it is briefly mentioned in the text about the princess of the evil water creatures, Ulhydra, stating that she can summon either 1 to 3 water elementals, 1 to 2 sea hags, or 2 to 5 water weirds per day. They later on get a bunch of honorable mentions in the Dungeoneer Survival Guide, Manual of the Plains, Monster Manual 2, Moonshine, The Savage Frontier, and The Dreams of the Red Wizards, but all are with regards to the spell protection against elementals. They then appear in a lot, and I mean a lot, of adventure modules throughout 1st edition, as well as a bunch of dragon magazines. Now moving on to 2nd edition, where they appear and are given additional information in the 1989 Monstrous Compendium Volume 2. We get all the same info about the water weird that we had in the 1st edition manual, but we also get info saying that if the weird comes into contact with a water elemental, they then have a chance to usurp control over it, and this can happen with the DM rolling an 11 or higher on a d20. It states that the water weird is a solitary creature and does not interact with any other weirds of its kind. The only time you will find 2 or more weirds in the same space is purely because the food source is super easy to acquire there. Any that are found on the material plane are usually not there by choice. 9 times out of 10 they are there because of a magic user binding them into the space, maybe to protect something or to guard the space itself. That usually being the case, they would want nothing more than to be set free and return to their home. And because of their intelligence being higher than a normal elemental, there is a chance that you can bargain with it if a form of communication can be found. But them being chaotic in nature, any bargain with them can be tenuous at best, so be wary. The feeding patterns of a weird are still strangely unknown at best. It is known that they feed on the energies of the creatures that they drown in their bodies, so can only assume it is a similar way to how will-o-wisps feed. In the Monstrous Compendium Annual Volume 1, there is an actual earth weird mentioned in there, but we're not going to focus on that today. We're mainly focusing on the water weird. Water weirds show up in the 2nd edition monster manual, but are more of a subtype to the waterkin in the book. Anyone that is hit by a water weird's attack must make a saving throw or become paralyzed and dragged into the water where the weird is. Being paralyzed in water is not a good combination. I'm scared of water in general, so the idea of being paralyzed in there just makes that a whole lot worse. They again appear in a metric butt ton of adventures and dragon magazines, so to save me going through every detail from all of these, I'll just post a picture of the list of adventures and books and magazines that they appear in here. In 3rd edition, they appear in the 3rd edition Monster Manual 2, and we get not just the water weird, but also the earth, air, and fire weird, and they get the dubbed named elemental weird. They are described as cryptic beings of elemental force who are powerful in the art of divination. They are classed as oracles, soothsayers, and seers of knowledge past, present, and future, which is completely different to the previous editions. Each weird in the 3rd edition is made up of the material of the plane that they are based from being, that being water, earth, fire or air. They also have a special knowledge of the particular aspect of the fate with which its element is associated with. It says they reside in remote and hidden locations, making it difficult for anyone who seeks their guidance to locate them. The upper body of a weird in 3rd edition always resembles that of a beautiful female humanoid, unlike in previous editions where they only resembled serpents. The lower half may be either humanoid or a serpentine column of water or element. Apparently, a weird in 3rd edition can divine information that could change the very course of history. Now that is crazy. They are described as very cryptic creatures with their words and never really give a straight answer to anyone looking for their guidance. Even though they are cryptic and difficult to decipher, they are never wrong. They do not give this information out for free, however. They do require a great offering for this information. And if you don't have a good enough offering, they are prepared to give you a great quest to go on for the creature. They can also communicate with any creature that they come in contact with that has any language, which is really interesting. And unlike previous editions where they would attack anything on sight, these versions tried their best to avoid fighting. They prefer to communicate and negotiate rather than go into battle. If negotiating is not an option, then the weird will summon elementals to defend them. And if there were elementals already present when combat began, they would then attempt to take control of them and turn them against their masters. Each weird dwells within a large pool filled with its purest form of its element. The pool is always secured to a flat surface so that the depth forms a hollow within the surface. The base of the pool will contain a portal to the weird's native plane, and 3 times a day the weird can summon forth 2d4 huge elementals, 1d4 greater elemental, or 1 elder elemental through the portal. Any non-elemental creature entering the pool without the weird's permission must succeed on a fortitude save of a DC of 20 each round or be irrevocably transformed into the elemental material of the pool. So say if you just step into a pool of a water weird without permission. If you don't beat that save, you're turning into liquid, my friend. Creatures granted access to the pool by the weird are not subject to the transformation. However, creatures allowed to enter the pool must still provide their own protection from the elemental material, as well as the means to breathe and move within that environment. I'm not going to go through each of the elements of the weird in this book, but I'm only going to focus on the water variant, but we may go over other types in shorts or TikToks in the future, so keep an eye out. Water weirds are the soothsayers of the world and bring words of healing to the wounded. They offer curative knowledge for suffering lands and new options for people who seek a better way. When there is little to no hope for life, water weirds offer a way to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat against all odds. Regardless of the type of the weird, they are all connected to each other in some way or another. They have a bond that gives them all a level of cooperation between each other. If for whatever reason a weird cannot give you the answer you're looking for, they will guide you to another weird somewhere in the world that might be able to provide you with what you are looking for. They then also appear in the Barrow of the Forgotten King Adventure module, but surprisingly, that's it for 3rd edition. No other mentions until 4th edition later in the years. Speaking of 4th edition, let's talk about it. There's nothing. Not one mention in the official books of 4th edition of the Water Weird whatsoever. They do, however, get some mentions in a couple of dungeon magazines, them being Dungeon Magazine 215, The Last Slave Lord, and Dungeon Magazine 221, the Lowdown in Highport. You also get a brief mention in Dragon Magazine 370 in reference to their early editions in D&D Adventures. But that's it, nothing. Water Weirds then sprout their little watery heads in the 5th edition Monster Manual. In the book, they are reverted back to their water serpent description and are back to their attacking everything in sight nature. They have no concept of good and evil, although if one is bound to a secret land, they will take on the aspect of the land and change its alignment to fit the area. So for example, there is a chance that you could get a neutral good water weird, where they will try and frighten any attackers rather than fight them. And unlike in previous editions, a weird will lose any evil alignment with a purify food and water spell, unlike previously where it would kill them instantly. They also appear in the Prince of the Apocalypse adventure module, as well as the Out of the Abyss, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Tales of the Yawning Portal, and Volo's Guide to Monsters, where in Volos they are classed as allies to Storm Giants. Okay, we've gone over all the publication of the Water Weird, now let's go over their stats. They're classed as large elementals with an armor class of 13 and 58 hit points, and they have a 0 feet walking speed but a swim speed of 60 feet, but they cannot leave the water that they are bound to. They're pretty strong and pretty intelligent compared to other elementals, and have a resistance to fire and bludgeoning, piercing and slashing for non-magical weapons. And they are also immune to poison and cannot be exhausted, grappled, paralyzed, poisoned, restrained, prone or knocked unconscious. They have a challenge rating of 3 and can only stand Aquan but cannot speak it, unlike previous editions where they could speak to anyone who had a language. It has an invisible in water ability where the water weird is invisible when fully immersed in water. It also has a water-bound ability where the water weird dies if it leaves the water to which it is bound to, or if the water is destroyed. Now for the actions, it does only get 1 action, but it's nothing to laugh at. It has a constrict attack that has a +5 to hit and a reach of 10 feet, and it deals 3d6 bludgeoning damage. If the target is a medium or smaller creature and it is grappled, it needs to break a DC 13 to escape the grapple. On a fail, they are pulled 5 feet towards the water weird. Until the grapple ends, the target is restrained and the water weird tries to drown it. And the water weird cannot constrict another target, so they can only hit 1 at a time. And that is it for the water weird. You can see these guys in a bunch of scenarios. You can have them be the guardians of an underground temple somewhere in the Underdark, where at the entrance you have to acquire 2 pieces of a key to get in that the water weirds are holding. Or it could be as simple as our party camp at a lake for a night, only to be attacked by a water weird living in the lake where they lay to rest. And there could be a portal to the elemental plane of water at the bottom of the lake. That is all I have for you guys today on the water weird. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all found this video helpful. And if there's anything that I've missed, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. What monster would you like to see me cover in the future? Let me know in the comments below and I will add your comment at the end of that video. You can also find links to all my socials down below to keep up to date. Thank you all for watching and I will see you all in the next one.